real serious thinkers were led around by slogans and ridiculous signage. We're easily moved off of the serious path into, just basically throwing nonsense bombs at each other. And I had a couple of listeners send me some examples and said, "Hey, I don't know if you saw this," or "Hey, have you seen this?" And again, it's one of those things that makes you go, "Yeah, another reason why we're just not a serious nation." One of them comes right in my backyard here in Pennsylvania. In fact, I've seen these billboards up on the highways. One of our former state senators ran for governor, ran probably the worst campaign in the history of campaigns. But former Senator Golf Spikes, Scott Wagner, he's paid, I guess, like 15 grand to put up some Joe Biden's making the Taliban great again billboards with an image of Joe Biden with the Taliban garb or whatever that's supposed to be. Again, just to get the faithful all happy and see, look what they did. Oh, it's disgusting. It's ridiculous. It's childish, but it's what they do. And look, both sides do it. Completely understand both sides. They want to rally the base. They want to get people all tingly and happy, and it's dumb. And you go, okay, that happens. You rich guy's got a boatload of money, and he makes his money off the government, but he'll tell you he's a private sector guy. Makes his money off of forced garbage collection. You have to be a garbage customer, or they're going to bill you and take your house. He uses that money to attack the very government that he benefits from. But hey, ideology and all that down the road. Another one that caught my attention was someone sent me this. Evidently, I guess somewhere in the Atlanta area, if I'm not getting this right, somewhere in Georgia, this group put up this billboard of the sainted Donald Trump, with the quote, "Unto us a son is given, and the government shall be upon his shoulders." Romans 8:17. Well, I looked up what Romans 8:17 said, and not that. And it got me into this spot. Romans 8:17 said, "And if children, they're heirs, heirs of God, and joint heirs with Christ, if so, it be that we suffer with him, that we may be also glorified together." That's not quite what maybe they just got the wrong quote. And there is something like that, but completely weird. But this is common on the right, to try and make things fit. Biblical quotes, especially my evangelical crowd, lots of attempts to twist the gospel into their ideology. Which, I go and I remember my Catholic school upbringing and the beatings that I took at the pointer and the yardstick of the nuns. And I seem to remember some stuff about, bearing false witness. I seem to remember some stuff about lying. I seem to, using the Lord's name in vain, and the whole false idol thing. I seem to kind of remember all of that being the central tenet of the Christian faith. Maybe it's just me. Maybe I haven't kept up with the latest memos that make all that stuff okay. But I remember the original memos I got. Those were basically crimes against the Bible, so things you should not do. Or you'll go to the fiery pit and you'll burn forever and ever. Amen. And it's just kind of weird that we're in this moment where, the people who tell us that they're the most pious, the most religious, they're the ones causing the most trouble. And I found this interesting little tidbit. There's a news story pointed out that of atheists, 90% of atheists have had at least one dose of the vaccine. 90% of atheists, while the least vaccinated group in the country are white evangelical Christians, Less than 57% of them have had at least one dose. And, I'm sitting here and I'm thinking about this. Because you have these evangelicals who keep saying, you're doused in the blood of Jesus and, God's going to protect you. You don't need vaccines or drugs or any of that stuff. You just have to have your faith. And what's interesting is the people who are mostly the ones pitching this nonsense are the people who believe that the rapture is coming. The end times, the end of humanity, and Jesus is going to come down with a sword and he's going to hack us non-believers and us heathens and us, marginally attached Christians and broken Catholics like me. You're going to hack us into pieces. It's going to be 1,000 years of misery. And they, the good ones, they're going to float up into the sky where everything is going to be wonderful. And it's going to be paradise. And it's weird because these are people who not only believe this, but they want it to happen. Desperately want this to happen on their watch. And are doing everything that they can possibly do to get us to the rapture point. And look, this is one of those things where I'm going, is this the grand view of the evangelicals? We're going to make things so bad that all of us start wishing for the end of times? Because I look at what politicians are doing. Look, we're literally putting politicians in charge of health decisions. It's no longer. Remember when they were saying, don't get anybody between me and my doctor? Well, now they're doing that. In fact, there was a story today that caught my attention that now more than half of the states in this country have taken some powers away from the state or local officials to do anything to protect citizens against infectious diseases. Not just COVID, but any future things that we come across. The ability of government to react being neutered. And that's by choice. It's by choice that they're consolidating power into their hands. The God complex, who lives, who dies. All the while justifying who gets what help. It's really quite remarkable that we're in this moment. Now, the folks over at the Kaiser Health News, they've evidently done a thorough review of hundreds of pieces of legislation from across the country. Their findings, not really surprising, to be honest. But their findings are, like I said, in at least 26 states, they have found where Republican legislatures have put forth legislation to curb the ability of government to respond. And it's some of it's as simple as Ohio, for instance. Ohio, the legislature there gave themselves the ability to overturn any health order. So if the Department of Health says this is what we need to do, and the government, the legislature said, nope, we will not allow it. We will forbade it. They've done everything they can do to weaken the school vaccine mandates. And what's coming after this one. No vaccines for COVID. And they're going to go after the other vaccines. So eventually they're going to want to make polio and mumps and measles and rubella and whooping cough and all that stuff that your kids got vaccinated for years ago and you got vaccinated for years ago, didn't even know about it. They're going to make that stuff incredibly difficult to mandate so that we can bring those things back. So why? I can only think that the evangelicals have gotten a hold of them, and the memo that they've got is we need to bring on the rapture. We need the end. We need the end times. That's all I can come up with, because it seems like the places that are raging the most are notches of the Bible Belt. Now, what the Kaiser Health Network came across is at least 16 states legislatures have limited the power of public health people to do their jobs, to basically keep people safe. They've limited the ability to mandate masks, quarantines, any of that stuff. Because, hey, it's going to be the honor system. Just be a good person. Like that's possible. They say at least 17 states have banned the COVID-19 vaccine mandates. and passports, which some states are going towards. Because again, we can't be trusted. This is one of those things where, I want to believe everyone's a decent human being. I do. But I know you're not. I know there's a good segment of you who don't care about me or anyone else. In fact, look, I get emails from you all the time telling me how much you hate us, how much you would like to see me get sick, how much you would like to see ill fall upon me, which, hey, that's your right to do. If it makes you feel better, good on you. I'm here for you. But I know that you're not decent. I know you're not concerned about me or my children or my family or my neighbors or my friends or any of that. I know that. All you care about is yourself. Very self-centered. That's dangerous. So if voluntarily we can't get people to care about everybody else, going to have to mandate it. Because ultimately you don't have the right to get me or anyone else sick. So on a certain level, we brought this on ourselves. Being shallow, being childish, not being serious, this is what we've gotten. They also point out that 9 states have new laws banning or limiting mask mandates. You got executive orders in a couple more states that have done away with it. So the thing that the simplest thing that could help us, yeah, we're not going to do that because we're smarter than that. We know better. We done our research. We got our research from Dr. Minaj, who gave us that great anecdotal story of the I don't know, the cousins, brothers, uncles, neighbors, grass cutting, I don't know, but him and his giant ball. We heard that story all day yesterday. And I guarantee you someone's going to go, I heard Dr. Minaj. It's crazy. It's crazy the times that we live in, and it's crazy what we've allowed ourselves to happen to ourselves. But again, it comes back down to the people that we've put into the positions of power, especially on the Republican side. Now, good news. California wasted $300 million on a recall election that nobody really wanted, but the moneyed interests pushed through, and it was a good bit of division for a little bit. But a massive win for Governor Newsom, who has now said, hey, look, we need to stiffen our spines. We need to lean in and keep getting people safe and keep getting them healthy. I don't disagree with him. This is kind of that moment where Democrats have got to steel up, got to stand up, got to say, look, we're going to lead. We're going to lead through this. And if the knuckle draggers are going to keep, doing what they're doing, they're going to be left behind, just like they want to happen to us. It's interesting how that whole dynamic, that fantasy, that the rapture is going to come and you're going to be left behind, when ultimately it's them. And maybe this is the trick. Maybe this is, God's funny little plan. I don't know. But what I do know is we're living in a moment where there is an incredibly infectious disease running around, rampant, and we have people who are doing everything to defy sanity, to defy reality, and to impose their childishness on the rest of us. And I don't like thinking that way. But it's weirdly the world that we're in. And if you look at the news that comes out of their right-wing circles, if you look at some of the stuff that's been thrown out, and look, I'm struggling coming around to not being angry at people who haven't gotten the vaccine. I'm struggling to come around to the reality that maybe they're just overly misinformed. Maybe I've been harsh, maybe stupid and moronic or too harsh, maybe overly misinformed is the right way. Because there have been a lot of doctors that I've been reading lately who are saying, look, I don't blame these patients in front of me. They're not experts. They're looking for the truth. They're seeking truth in all the wrong places. Places where people have alternative motives, political motives, ideological motives, all kinds of things outside of the reality of, hey, how do we help people stay well? How do we help people stay healthy? Do better. It's about selling snake oil or beet juice or whatever else, what other cocktail that they're dreaming up, that trying to convince you that, you don't need that vaccine. We'll give you these herbs and these natural things. Well, you know what? Arsenic is natural too. Arsenic is natural as well, but arsenic will kill you. Same thing. If we throw a whole bunch of stuff into an unregulated capsule and call it a dietary supplement, who knows what you're taking? And this is the amazing thing to me. I have friends who religiously take a series of all these things. Reports are half the stuff isn't what you're taking. It's not in there. The niacin, the wheat, the beetroot, whatever, or it's not there. You're being sold junk, and you're ruining your kidneys in the process. But hey, you believe it's going to help you. Because that guy on the radio you heard, who's making his living off of you buying whatever supplements that you're shoving down your hole, he sold you on it because you trusted him. And where my problem is how are you trusting him? See, I'll tell you, don't trust me. Trust your doctor on this stuff. That's the person you should be talking to, the expert. See, it's what I do. I trust expertise. I trust people who, I don't know, spent their life doing this stuff. These are the people who, they're the smart ones. They didn't get their epidemiology license out of a Cracker Jack box. The MD didn't come out of the gumball machine. They didn't get the secret decoder ring that made them a virologist. They actually spent their life studying this stuff. They didn't sit on the toilet reading Facebook and watching YouTube. They actually know this stuff. Those are the people I trust. The people I've had relationships with who've never steered me wrong in the past and haven't yet. And if you don't have those relationships with people like that, I feel sorry for you because you need it. At least that's my thought. I'd love to hear yours. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Tell me what you think, what you know, or what you believe. I'd love to hear it, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Quick break. Right back. Up, and the union gives a voice to win on the Rick Smith Show. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1945. That was the day oil workers walked off the job. The strike soon spread to 20 states and involved more than 43,000 workers at 22 oil companies. After years of wartime wage freezes, the union's demand was 52 for 40, 52 hours pay for 40 hours work. Workers demanded a 30% pay increase, shift differentials, and an eventual return to the 36-hour work week. The strike began in Michigan at the Sicconi Vacuum Refinery in Trenton. From there, it spread to Gulf, Sinclair, and Shell. By October 4th, President Truman signed Executive Order 9639, allowing the Secretary of the Navy to seize petroleum operations. The Oil Workers International Union CIO immediately called off the strike and ordered its members back to work. A month later, the Navy had still not relinquished control of operations. The Union considered Truman's seizure a betrayal. There was no mechanism put in place to settle the dispute or consider workers' demands. By January 1946, the oil panel created by the Secretary of Labor finally awarded oil workers an 18% wage increase. Though disappointed, the Union considered it a victory. They asserted the strike action was significant on a number of levels. The first nationwide industry strike had just forced the oil companies to meet with the union for the very first time. The OWI believed the groundwork for industry-wide bargaining had been finally established. It had been the first post-war strike and had forced the government to begin moving away from wartime wage controls. Of the post-war strikes, it won the largest pay increase. And importantly, it broke the power of Standard Oil to dictate wages to the industry through its dealings with its independent union.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So as we talked about the other day, the number one agenda for our Republican senators here in Pennsylvania is, pushing the Trump conspiracy line. That was Jake Corman's That was his statement to the Philly Inquirer, that that is the number one agenda. Nothing else. There is nothing else that's more important than continuing to push this failed attempt to undermine our democracy. And look, what are we, 318 days from the November election? They've had all this time to spew conspiracy theory, nobody holding them accountable to the lies and misinformation that they're continually throwing out there. And now, what they want is they want every bit of information on each and every one of us. Remember the party of smaller government, less intrusive government, local control? They want all 67 counties to give each and every one of their voters information to them. And they're subpoenaing to do it. I'm here to share some thoughts on why this is such a bad idea and why this could hopefully be their undoing at some point. And somebody maybe take that party back to sane. I've asked our good friend, Pennsylvania State Senator Art Haywood, to come talk with Art. Thanks for taking time for us.
Thank you for inviting me on this very crucial issue for our community.
So am I getting this right that the head guy there in the Pennsylvania State Senate, Jake Corman, has said this is it? Never mind the eviction moratorium being tossed out. Never mind, thousands of people still looking for jobs. Never mind the fact that we haven't gotten people paid the unemployment benefits that they owed from last year. Never mind any of that stuff. Hungry children, homeless veterans, roads and bridges. None of that stuff's important. This conspiracy theory, this Donald Trump, Rudy Giuliani, Sidney Powell, Lynn Wood, this nonsense, this is what's important.
Yeah, this shows how deeply misguided the Republican leadership is. We've got $5 billion of unspent money from our last budget and the Biden administration, which is supposed to go to address the current needs of communities in hospitals with overtime, so many current needs. And what they're doing is a direct attack on our privacy and freedom by demanding last four social security number, birth date, social security number, address, all that was provided to the Department of State with our consent. Now, this is without our consent. This is taking this information on a partisan basis, not for the House Republicans, not for the House Democrats, not for the Senate Democrats, only for the Senate Republicans. To do what? They still have not explained what they're going to do with our private information, for which they have not demonstrated any accountability for getting this private information for each of us.
The only thing that I can think of, Senator, is that they look with envy to the chaos that was caused in Arizona. That's the only thing that I can come up with, that they look at the cyber ninjas who came and basically made the state, have to buy new machines. They handed over all kind of technology. To me, this isn't about 2020. This is figuring out how they can rig and fix and do whatever they got to do to game the next election, because it's over. All sane, rational people have gone, look, Joe Biden won Pennsylvania by 80,000 votes. You've had every bite at the apple at every level of our judicial system. You've gone through state audits, county audits. We've gone through everything. We've bent over backwards to go, no, this is what it is. And that's not enough, because that's not what it's about.
We've already had two audits of the 2020 election. So the audits have been done and have confirmed time and time again that there was no mass fraud or irregularities. Rick, this is also about voter intimidation, because voters who register to vote now know that their personal information may be subjected to a bunch of Republican legislators. This is going to have a chilling effect on registering people to vote when they have these new exposure. Never before was a person who registered to vote facing the risk that this personal information would get over to a bunch of unaccountable individuals. And that's exactly what we have and why we must stop it.
No, this is one of those scary things. I mean, because look, I'm looking at this as in a moment of going, I don't think I truly viscerally believe that this isn't about securing our electoral process. This isn't about ensuring the sanctity of our ballot box. This is pure partisan hackery. This is about gathering information, wanting to find out who's voting for who. The kind of demographic information and stuff that they can't get anywhere else. That they're abusing their power to grab from us. Because one of the things that I was told years ago, the reason we have 67 different county electoral offices and 67 different county officials and 67 different ways of doing things is that was the strength of our system. Our diversity was the strength, so that no one had all of this information all in one place. And a Republican's the one who told me that. Now they're going, no, we want all that information. We're going to destroy all of that. Because, well, we're having a temper tantrum like a 2-year-old in the cereal aisle. Mom said you can't have the Fruit Loops.
And it's not just a temper tantrum. This is a real attack on our freedom. We have registered to vote. I registered to vote, provided personal information. Now that's all at risk of identity theft and other use. There's no system to secure the information that's been disclosed to us. How do we have any sense that the information will not be subject to cyber attack? The Department of State has a significant cybersecurity system. There's not anything equivalent to that the Senate Republicans have. And so we have a tremendous risk of a cyber theft of this personal information. It is a direct threat on our privacy.
So the question that I come back to, one, how do we stop it? I mean, because this is something, I've talked to some of my Republican friends over. I'm going, look, what would you be doing if Art Haywood and the Democrats were coming after all your personal information? Would you be okay with that? Because I still wouldn't be. Again, I go back to what we were told. Our diversity is our strength. 67 different local elections officials. It seems to me that our Republican friends in the Senate are attempting to steamroll our local officials. And I got to think my conservative friends, if they dig into their ideology, would look at that and go, no, this isn't what we want.
It should not be what we want, because the diversity is important. Allowing individuals to share the last four of their social security number, to share their driver's license, is all with the expectation that information is going to remain solely with the Department of State and not circulated beyond it. And so there's a significant chilling effect that is certain to be here. I know that Senate Democrats are preparing a lawsuit to stop the subpoena and seeking an injunction to stop the release of this information. A number of individuals have called my office directly today saying that they want to file to protect their own personal information, so that of the 7 million voters, that their information cannot be shared with these individuals. So I anticipate quite a bit of litigation in order to stop it, which is already such a tremendous waste of time. For, as you have said, the 2020 election has been certified. It is done. It is done. And so this can only be about a scheme to figure out how to take advantage of the 22 or 24 election and to continue the lie that there's something fundamentally wrong with our democratic system of electing individuals.
And the other part of it, there's always more. This is about vowing the allegiance to the orange ring. This is about the former guy. This is about making sure that they don't make enemies of the former guy. And it's amazing to me, because I talked yesterday on the program about how I understand people being worried. I understand people being afraid, and especially in union organizing campaigns, that the boss is looking over their shoulder and they're worried they could lose, their situation. But I look at the people like you, our elected leaders, who we have put into positions of power. We've given a lot of power to, a lot of respect. We put you up on a pedestal a lot of times. And in this moment, to not have the courage to come forward and say, you know what, it's over, it's done, we're moving along, we're going to fight the next fight. That's why elections matter. and go that route. But no, we seem to be stuck in this moment of feeding the radical base because, well, like children in the cereal aisle, they're having their temper tantrum, and instead of like parents picking them up and dragging them away, they're feeding them the cereal in the aisle.
And there is a clear option. Senator Gene Yaw, a Republican, has said the election is over. Stop it. Senator Dan Laughlin, a Republican, State Senator Dan Laughlin, also said the election is over, doesn't support this. So there's a position within the state Senate Democrats that says, don't follow this course of action. It is only for Senator Corman to adopt the position of some of his already existing members. So there is an option for Senator Corman, and it is to join Republican State Senator Gene Yaw, join Republican State Senator Dan Laughlin, who have condemned this course of action. This is the responsible course of action. Yeah. Unfortunately, it appears not to be taken.
I got to tell you, I've followed Jake Corman's career over the years, and I never viewed him as this kind of radical. I always knew he was far off on the conservative side, and I always, our politics don't match. But this is something you would expect of some kind of a kook like Wagner. When Scott Wagner was in office, you would expect that from the fringe, not from someone in high up leadership. That's concerning to me. That's telling me the Republican Party of our state, of the state of Pennsylvania, has lost its ever-loving freaking mind.
Unfortunately, that is the case. Before, it was the extremist State Senator Doug Mastriano who attended the rally, the insurrection. He was the leader of it. But now that extremism has been adopted by the primary leader of the Senate Republicans, and it is their identity. They cannot run from that identity. The leader has established that identity, and all of us Pennsylvanians, Democrat, Republicans, Independent, we've got to reject it. This cannot be the way forward where our personal information is subjected to review by unknown people without any stated security for any of that information. Our freedom's at stake and our privacy's at stake, and we must fight it.
No, absolutely. So, again, we see a lot of the same kind of legislation that are in places like Georgia and Arizona that are trying to limit people's ability to vote. So this is one thing. This wanting to gather all the information on every single voter in the state to do, as you've pointed out, who knows what with, hand over to who knows who, could be cyber ninjas, could be anyone. But there's also the other side of this, the roadblocks that they want to throw up, more of the same, policies to restrict voting as opposed to opening up access, which is where I think we should be going. Look, if you're a legal voter in this state, there shouldn't be so many roadblocks to you being able to exercise your right to the franchise. We should be liberalizing this, opening it up, and doing more. But our friends in your chamber, they're working to close that off.
We are going in the wrong direction completely. We are completely going in the wrong direction. We will need the citizens of this state to respond, to share with the Republican leadership that they want their private information private. They want the freedom to exercise the vote without any of these intrusive investigations. So this is a key opportunity for the people of Pennsylvania to step up and take a stand. Take a stand for freedom. Take a stand for privacy. Take a stand for voting. This is the time to take a stand.
No, absolutely, and this is where I generally go. Call your state senators, call your representatives. This is one of those moments you go, no, we really should be, because as you've pointed out, there are people who want to sign on to a lawsuit. And look, if there's somebody out there gathering people together to sign on to a lawsuit, I want to be at the front of the line of this, because this should not happen. This is not something that I'm comfortable with, and nor should any voter be. So we should be looking into every person calling their senator, but also looking into if there's going to be some kind of class action moving forward.
I will definitely share with you the progress on the litigation, because we'll need citizens from across the Commonwealth and county after county to join in. And for those who are maybe independent or those who may be Republican, on this call who are generally aligned with the Republican Party, just keep in mind, Senator Jen Yaw says no. Senator Dan Laughlin says no. But the leader and his followers, Senator Jake Corman, say yes to this attack on our freedom and attack on our privacy.
So
we must reject it.
Last line of questioning I got for you, because, you know, I've got listeners who viscerally believe that the election was stolen, that dead people were voting, that multiple armies of dead people were voting, that you were up in the middle of the night down there in Philadelphia stuffing the ballot boxes and all of this stuff. This was the most watched election, I would argue, in the history of this country. There were more Republican poll watchers than ever before, and yet nothing that they've claimed out loud in public they bothered to bring into court. Why?
And that's because they have no evidence, and several courts have condemned the lawyers for bringing forward cases where there was no evidence to support mass irregularities in the election. The same is true here. There have been several pieces of litigation where courts have decided there's no way, no basis for overturning the votes here in Pennsylvania. So the courts have decided. There's been 2 audits already. Let me also say this. I don't know any other elected Republicans who will say on record that they were voted in illegally. The Auditor General, statewide election, Republican, was he voted in illegally? I haven't heard that.
Yeah.
The Treasurer for our state, statewide election, Republican, very wonderful person. No claim that she was voted in illegally. All of half of the state Senate was voted in November.
That is an excellent point.
Were they all voted in illegally? All of the House of Representatives, all 203, were voted in November. I've heard no claim that they were all voted in illegally. All these people are on the ballot, and there's only one person where there's this claim.
Yeah. No, it's really remarkable, and this is why we got to fight this so much. But Art, I appreciate you sharing some time with us. Keep us up to date on what's going on, what we can do. Please come back.
Will do. Thank you so much.
Good stuff. Our good friend, Pennsylvania State Senator Art Haywood. Love to hear your thoughts. Rick at thericksmithshow.com. Quick break. Right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk.
Remembering that united we bargain, divided we beg. Rick Smith.
Thanks for watching the show. If you like what we do, there are lots of ways to support us and get a bunch of great content at the same time. You can become a patron of the show by going to patreon.com/Rick Smith Show. Search for us on YouTube for tons of new video content and a live stream of the show every day. Be sure to like and subscribe while you're there. If you want to follow us on social media, we're easy to find on Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram. You can stream the show using the Free Speech TV app or watch us in one of our 2 time slots each week, Thursday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern or Saturday nights at 7 p.m. Eastern. Podcast fans can find us pretty much anywhere, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and the TuneIn app. We upload new content almost every day, but we began as a radio show, and because of that, we work hard to make sure the show is free and accessible to community radio stations from coast to coast. If you're a fan of the radio show, call your local station and thank them for putting us on. If we're not on your local radio dial, call your local community radio station and ask for us. They're not a bunch of corporate hacks, so they'll listen. I know this is a lot of information to take in all at once, so let's make this simpler. The fastest and easiest way to access all this great content is by going to our website, thericksmithshow.com. There you'll find links to all the different ways to enjoy the show and all the ways you can support us and those who help us fight back against the corporate media machine. We've been right up in their greedy little faces since 2005, and with your help, we plan to keep fighting the good fight for many years to come. Thanks for your help. We hope you enjoyed the show, and we look forward to seeing you back here next time.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So I'll tell you, I was a little concerned that the 21 Social Security trustee report was going to be really ugly. Look, after the pandemic, we're still in it, but after last year, the nightmare that was, and the fact that nobody was really working, and the fact that Social Security is funded by people working, I was kind of concerned this was going to be a really horrible, horrible report. Not that it's great, but not as bad as I thought it was going to be. And here to share some thoughts on what it is, where it is, and how it is, I've asked our good friend Dan Adcock to come talk with us. Dan's the Director of Government Relations and Policy there at the National Committee to Preserve Social Security and Medicare. Their website, an interesting one, ncpssm.org. We'll get links out on social media so you can take a look at that. Dan, thanks for taking time for us.
Oh, Rick, thanks for having me back on your show. Enjoy being here.
So I'm looking at this report. And you guys have done a fantastic analysis over at your website. I was expecting bad. Is it as bad as we were expecting?
It's not nearly as bad as we were expecting. I mean, especially when we're really right in the middle of the pandemic, probably maybe about 8 months ago, with what everybody was calling the COVID recession at that time. We thought it would be particularly bad for people who were turning 60 in 2020 and 2021 because of the way the Social Security benefit formula works and how average wages were affected. But the good news is the bad news isn't worse. For those folks, doesn't seem like it's going to be an issue any longer. And then the insolvency date is only 1 year, only 1 year earlier. The trust fund still has about 2.9 trillion in reserves in it. So, but obviously we don't want to get to 2034 and have a benefit cut. And because of the fact that there's still payroll tax revenue coming into the trust fund, the program would still pay 78% of benefits, but we don't want to get to that point. And there's definitely things that can be done to not only extend solvency, but do it without cutting benefits and actually improving benefits for the growing share of Americans who depend on Social Security for all or most of their income in retirement.
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you. 2034 is a magic year for me as well, because that's the year that I've got marked down on the calendar that I want to retire. So please, we need to do something to make sure. And this is radical self-interest. I understand that. But I want to make sure that the first year that I get Social Security, they go, sorry, we're going to have to slash it.
Right. Well, and that's a scary thing about what some elected officials say. They tell today's retirees, hey, you're going to be fine, but if you're 55 or younger, you'll have more time to save for the future and plan for the future, which is a load of BS, because, like, for instance, the Kaiser Family Foundation did some work that shows that middle-class wages are likely to stay flat for as far as the eye can see. So the extra time doesn't do anything for you. And, I think it's great that they want to ensure that today's retirees don't lose a lot of income through benefit cuts. But how is that supposed to be solace for anybody who's younger, who's coming up, who contributed into the system through their whole working life? And the reality actually is that many of those people who say that have supported a plan called the chain CPI that would cut COLAs for current retirees. So it's a bit disingenuous for a lot of them to say that current retirees would be protected, when in reality they wouldn't if they got their way.
Yeah, I mean, I look at this and look, I don't want cuts for anyone. Radically, my interest is 2034. But this has become, for most people, and I'm in a fortunate position. I'm going to have a union pension. We'll have some pretty decent savings. The three-legged stool that retirement was supposed to be, my stool is going to be pretty strong. I worry about everyone else that over my working career, we've seen the evisceration of the defined benefit pension for these defined contribution plans that really aren't working. And also, the savings that isn't happening because wages have been suppressed and folks are struggling to get by. So I'm looking down the road at this retirement crisis that a lot of people aren't going to be able to retire with any type of security. So for me, Social Security is this thing we should be looking at right now to go, hey, how do we shore it up? And especially when we're spending a lot of money on things, Why didn't we put a little bit of the money that we spent in the last plans into Social Security to make sure we're not creating an even bigger crisis?
Right. Well, and that's right. And I think you're right. Uh, uh, Really, for a lot of Americans, that three-legged stool has become a one-legged pedestal. That all they have is Social Security. Because only half of employers in the United States offer any kind of retirement benefit. So there's half of employers that don't even have access to a defined contribution 401k type of plan. And so they're totally dependent on being able to save outside any kind of retirement system on their own. And if they are living paycheck to paycheck, they're not in a position to save anything.
Yeah, I mean it's scary times. I mean, especially in this moment because with all the other uncertainty, and when you're going, oh my gosh, this is another thing, Dan. This is something else I've got to worry about. It's not bad enough that I'm worried about getting sick. It's not bad enough that I'm worried about my loved ones getting sick. That our wages haven't kept up. The healthcare costs are going through the roof. Now you're telling me, oh my gosh, what I was depending on, a decade down the road plus, probably isn't going to be there for me. So what do we do? I mean, at the end of this. We can solve these problems. This isn't insurmountable at this moment. What can we do?
Well, luckily, President Biden has embraced proposals to extend solvency without cutting benefits and actually improving benefits. And so right now, Congressman John Larson, who is chair of the House Subcommittee on Social Security, is writing legislation that's based on previous bills he's introduced, the Social Security 2100 Act. And what that legislation would do is would extend solvency and finally make wealthier individuals pay their fair share into Social Security in the form of payroll taxes, but also at the same time include some important benefit improvements like a cost of living adjustment that's based on the true costs that are experienced by elderly people, especially the disproportionate share that they spend on healthcare.
Yeah, I mean that sounds like a good start. What are the chances of something like that getting through the current political world that we live in? Because understand, while all of us may be going, hey, that sounds great. We need to do something. 60 votes are never coming out of the Senate, which is weird because Social Security is, at least I believe, a nonpartisan issue. It used to be politically the third rail. We never touched it. We never talked about weakening it, but yet I don't see a Republican vote out of this.
Yeah, unfortunately, you're right. I would say, though, to your point about it being a nonpartisan issue, it is amongst rank and file Republicans. Whenever we or anybody else does any polling on this issue, you get incredible support in the 70% range, regardless of party affiliation and age, for doing the kind of legislation that President Biden would support, and that Congressman John Larson is writing as we speak. So what's going on is Republican members of Congress are tone deaf to their own base, who really want to see this solved without benefits being cut. But to answer your question, I think at least there's going to be the votes for it in the House, and hopefully that will happen. It's something that's going to happen right now after all the current debate is going on with the Build Better Act and the bipartisan infrastructure. So I think that Congressman Larson, once he introduces his bill, he will hold hearings on it on the Social Security Subcommittee under the Full Ways and Means Committee in the House. And then hopefully the House will approve his legislation. But you're right, the problem will be in the Senate because unlike the provisions right now in the Build Better Act that would enable Medicare to negotiate prescription drug prices or add dental, vision, and hearing to Medicare, that legislation can pass with just 50 votes in the Senate because it's being kind of considered under what's called budget reconciliation legislation, but Social Security cannot be considered under budget reconciliation. So it's subject to the filibuster. It does require 60 votes to pass. And I think at this point, it'd be hard pressed, but hopefully our hope is that given the momentum of House passage of this legislation would give to trying to reform Social Security and everything that we could do to try to lean on Republican senators, that would happen. But it's a huge, heavy lift. It's much heavier than what's going on right now to allow Medicare to negotiate prescription drugs or add dental vision hearing to Medicare.
Yeah, I want to ask you that for a second, but I got to know why we can't add Social Security to the budget reconciliation bill. I think I know the answer, but why is it? It's a financial thing. Why can't we simply just put this into the Build Back Better plan that we're going to make sure Social Security is funded?
Well, it's specifically prohibited by the Congressional Budget Act. You're just not allowed to change it. And that has, in some ways, that's also protected us because it means that, when there's majorities in the House and the Senate that favor cutting Social Security, they also have to muster the 60 votes in the Senate to cut it. So, it's a double-edged sword. It's kind of a little bit like in the same way the filibuster is. The filibuster has enabled Democrats to stop bad things from happening when they're in the minority. The problem is that Democrats are hamstrung when they're in the majority and they want to do good things. So it's budget reconciliation, how Social Security is affected by it is kind of analogous of what we're experiencing right now with the filibuster.
Now, a second ago, you brought up the prescription drug prices, and all of my Democratic friends are spasming over the fact that three moderate Democrats voted against the plan to cut prices. Now, I understand they have their own plan, and this is where we get into some bizarre weeds of my plan cuts better than your plan. I just want something that's going to allow Medicare to negotiate for drug prices like every other country in the world. I know we like to feel special. I know we like to be exceptional. But this is the kind of place where I don't want to be special or exceptional. I don't want to pay a retail price for anything. I don't want to pay above retail price. If we have leverage to negotiate for lower prices, there is no reason on God's green earth that we cannot negotiate for lower prices other than a bad law passed during the Bush administration.
Right, that's right. Yeah, so specifically when the Medicare Part D drug program was created in 2003, the way to get the pharmaceutical companies not to oppose the legislation was to specifically prohibit Medicare from negotiating prescription drug prices. So, it's a crazy kind of situation that creates is that, on one hand, I think that policymakers and the public, they want to control out of skyrocketing medical costs across the board, including prescription drug prices. But you can't even begin to do that. You have both hands tied behind your back. When drug companies can charge whatever they want, and the basically taxpayers and patients just have to suck it up. That we're paying 3 to 4 times more for prescription drugs than any other country in the world, and it just makes zero sense that Medicare doesn't have that. But to kind of answer or respond to your original point, despite these 3 blue dog Democrats in the Energy and Commerce voting against the drug package in that bill, I think the bill that eventually goes to the House floor will have prescription drug price reform in it. So, but they're not the only moderates that we have to deal with and have to get agreement on, since we do need 50 votes in the Senate to pass this legislation. The Senator Bob Menendez from New Jersey, and then also Senator Manchin and Sinema, and maybe to a lesser extent Senator Carper and Coons in Delaware. And others, all eyes are on them in terms of what they're willing to do, and including on this issue on prescription drug prices.
Yeah, I mean, it makes no sense why we've got this retail ideal. Considering, and this is what's infuriating to me, considering our tax dollars funds most of the research that these drug companies are benefiting off of. I've always been of the mindset that, our university system is where a lot of this research is done. It's done with tax dollars. We should be owning those patents. And if we want to profit from it, maybe that's how we would fund our healthcare system. That's how we would fund more research and development. Maybe, who knows? I know this is a way out. Maybe we could actually find that elusive cure for cancer.
Right. Well, and this is one of the things that is outrageous about this debate is that, I think probably, at least I know in our media market here in the Washington, D.C., pharmas and drug companies are running ads, or they have front groups that are running ads to say, oh, Medicare negotiation is such a bad thing, and the Congress shouldn't pass it, and it'll affect innovation and research and development. But as you said, a lot of their research and development is subsidized by by the work that's done in universities, but it's also being done by the tax code. And then pharmaceutical companies turn around and they spend more on advertising and marketing and stock buybacks than they do on the cost of research and development. So, they're crying crocodile tears whenever they say that this is going to hurt them. It's not. Maybe they won't make, boatload after boatload of money, but they're still going to have huge profits, and the taxpayers in this country and patients are going to get a better deal for their drugs.
Yeah, they're just going to get a boatload of money.
Right.
They'll just get a boatload, not boatloads and boatloads.
Exactly.
At some point, you go, enough is enough. I mean, it's ridiculous when you hear the prices that other countries pay and what we pay. It's mind-boggling. But again, we don't have that mindset that we should get what we need, which only what we can afford. And on that front, I want to end up on the fact that finally Joe Biden and the Democrats are saying, hey, look, Medicare should offer better coverage. Hearing, vision, dental. Always seems strange to me that none of that was covered, considering, especially, one of the first things they do when you go for surgery is make sure you don't have any dental problems. It just seems weird that we don't cover it to this point, that this wasn't something over the last, 70 years that's actually been moved forward on. What are the chances of getting something on this?
I think pretty good. I think that, amongst the Democratic leadership in the House and the Senate, it seems to be a priority for them. I think at the very least, they're looking to get a foot in the door. Maybe the benefits initially will be fairly basic, but be improved over time in the same way that's been true of the Medicare prescription drug benefit. And, you're right. I mean, all these benefits, dental, vision, hearing, they're really all important for healthy aging, because if you neglect any of those three, it's a problem. And specifically, I want to cite the hearing benefit, because we've been doing work with Dr. Frank Lynn, who's a clinician and researcher at Johns Hopkins in Baltimore, who's done work with the National Institutes of Health. And what he's found is there's a link between untreated hearing loss and dementia and Alzheimer's disease. So if we were able to get more people, make a hearing aids more affordable for more people, that means there would be less people that would have to deal with dementia and Alzheimer's disease. And today, we're spending about $300 billion on treating people with those memory and cognitive declines. And by 2050, we're going to be spending about almost $800 billion. So if we could just whittle a few percentage points off that, not only will we save a lot of money, but we'll improve the quality of life of generations of people to come, not just for themselves, but for their families that want to spend more time with them. So I don't think that's too much to ask.
I'm right there with you. We got to get something done, and now is the time to do it. But Dan, I appreciate you taking some time for us. Keep up the great work, and come back and tell us. Come back to us and tell us when things are right. Dan, I appreciate it, man.
Thanks, Rick.
Good stuff. Our good friend Dan Adcock. He is the government affairs and policy person there at the National Committee to Preserve Social Security and Medicare. I'd love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Quick break, right back after this. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people from the top.
Remembering that united we bargain, divided we beg. Rick Smith.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1945. That was the day oil workers walked off the job. The strike soon spread to 20 states and involved more than 43,000 workers at 22 oil companies. After years of wartime wage freezes, the union's demand was 52 for 40, 52 hours pay for 40 hours work. Workers demanded a 30% pay increase, shift differentials, and an eventual return to the 36-hour work week. The strike began in Michigan at the Saccone Vacuum Refinery in Trenton. From there, it spread to Gulf, Sinclair, and Shell. By October 4th, President Truman signed Executive Order 9639, allowing the Secretary of the Navy to seize petroleum operations. The Oil Workers International Union CIO immediately called off the strike and ordered its members back to work. A month later, the Navy had still not relinquished control of operations. The Union considered Truman's seizure a betrayal. There was no mechanism put in place to settle the dispute or consider workers' demands. By January 1946, the oil panel created by the Secretary of Labor finally awarded oil workers an 18% wage increase. Though disappointed, the union considered it a victory. They asserted the strike action was significant on a number of levels. The first nationwide industry strike had just forced the oil companies to meet with the union for the very first time. The OWI believed the ground groundwork for industry-wide bargaining had been finally established. It had been the first post-war strike and had forced the government to begin moving away from wartime wage controls. Of the post-war strikes, it won the largest pay increase. And importantly, it broke the power of Standard Oil to dictate wages to the industry through its dealings with its independent union.
It's time for the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is the voice of the working class, Rick Smith.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here today on the big program. Lots to get to, lots to talk about. Our all-star panel in the house to talk about, well, all of the craziness going on around elections, the conspiracy theories, the fraud claims, well, the fantasy island world of the other guy and the Republican Party of today. Also, the big insurrection 2.0. Are we expecting 1 or a million crazy people to show up in Washington, D.C., and a little bit of talk about what grabs headlines in today's society. And here to share some thoughts on our topics, I've asked our good friend Rich Ojeda of No Dems Left Behind to come on the program. Rich, thanks for being here, man.
Airborne.
Sarah Burris, reporter over at Raw Story. Sarah, thanks so much.
Happy birthday.
And, of course, the professor, our very own Brett Pransky. Brett, thanks for tuning in.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So let's start right from the beginning. It seems the Republicans didn't get their wet dream wish list answered this year. The California recall didn't go quite as they had imagined that it would. Let's start, Rich, with you. Thoughts on the outcome of the recall election?
Well, I think it was awesome that it was an absolute massacre. You know, the thing that bothers me is that, I guess now every time a Republican loses an election, it's time for a recall. It's cry foul. Tax-paying dollars are spent to do these garbage recalls. And at the end of the day, I think that the person who loses a recall should be made to pay for, the price of that. Tax-paying citizens should not be left with the bill of something like that. And it's absolute garbage. But I love the fact that, Larry the loser lost. And, yay, go Gavin Newsom.
Yeah, but, Brett, the thing that caught my attention is the election wasn't even over, and the Larry Elder world, the baby Trumps of the world were already crying foul, but they got whipped 2-1.
Yeah, that's right. And actually the website and the donation portal and all these different things to fight the fraud actually went up before the polls even opened. So I mean, this was they were always going to make that claim. It was always going to be ridiculous, and that's exactly what it's turned out to be. And I agree with Rich. The people who launched these campaigns and put all this money into it, they should have to pay the taxpayer cost of administering the entire thing, because it was never a serious effort. It was never real. It was never going to come through. But it was a way for Republicans to grab headlines and cause a bunch of trouble and so on. And so they did. And I think it's shameful, and I think they should have to pay the cost for it.
I'm right there with you. But Sarah, it's interesting. California has such a low bar to recall a governor. And it just seems like at some point they're going to have to change that, because a handful of rich people can go and fund, a signature drive to get, I think it's $1.5 million signatures to get a governor recalled and usurp an election. Isn't this what elections were supposed to be? You don't like the guy, you wait the next year and you throw him out?
That's what it should be. I think in California, you have to have a percentage of the last vote or something like that. And that's how they decided. They actually couldn't get that to get the recall. They had to ask the judge for 2 more months and claimed, because of COVID, we need more time to get signatures. And so they couldn't even get the signatures in time, which should have been their greatest indication. Gee, maybe this isn't going so well. It was an absolute bloodbath at 2-1. The bad thing is if you compare the map of who voted for to recall Newsom and the COVID map, there's some really sad overlap there. You got the highest COVID areas of the state are the ones that supported the recall, and they're the ones who are angry at all of these mask mandates and lockdowns and all of the stuff that Newsom basically ushered in. and that's why he got recalled in the first place. So now that everybody's dying in California of COVID, folks are just like, gee, maybe that Gavin was right after all. Maybe that pretty boy knows what he's talking about.
Yeah, and the reality is he got, I think, 2 percentage points higher in the recall than he did in the general election. And this was supposed to be the time where all the rabid haters were supposed to be going to the polls. This was supposed to be their moment.
Yeah, it was 2 points higher than he got in the first election, and the no on the recall was 5 points higher than he got. So what's funny is that to me means that people voted not to recall him, and then didn't. There was a pretty large percentage of people who didn't fill out the rest of the ballot, which is dangerous. You guys could have ended up with the freaky dude who doesn't like women.
I got to tell you, there was a dark side of me that goes, give the people what they want. Give them someone crazy like Death Santis, like a Greg Abbott. And then I said, no, because innocent people are going to end up dead over it.
Yeah.
Well, I think here's the thing about California. They've done this once before, right? Like they had Arnold Schwarzenegger, and they do love their movie stars, but everybody was just like, oh, maybe this isn't such a good idea, because he kind of screwed some stuff up for the state, and it was important right now to have somebody who knows what they're doing.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, elections, it is really kind of like a popularity contest, but it's got to be more than that. I mean, it's got to be people that are competent. You got to know that when you cast that vote for somebody, they're actually going to, put the interests of the people first. And that's why it drives me crazy when I see the Herschel Walkers of this world scream that they want to become senators. And to be honest with you, probably have no concept of what legislation even is.
That's what we ended up with Donald Trump.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, the thing that Trump has done is everyone can be president now. I mean, as dumb as you possibly can be, that we want the worst guy. And look, the Republican Party understands that. They understand that they don't want everybody voting. They want to be able to put roadblocks in front of people to be able to vote, which is why you see places like Georgia doing what they're doing. But where I live in Pennsylvania, they're doing something even more fun. They're consolidating, or want to consolidate, every voter's personal information into one centralized database that they can do who knows what with. In fact, the head of the Senate here in Pennsylvania, Jake Corman, has come out and said that this attempt to grab all of the voter information is their number one issue. Not homelessness, not hungry children, not homeless veterans, not infrastructure, not evictions, none of that. Grabbing a hold of all of the demographic information and personal information of every voter, that's what's important. Rich, when you look at something like this, as someone who was a former state senator, what possible information, how could they use it? What good is this to them?
Honestly, I don't know. I mean, what are you trying to do? What is your final, deal? What do you, it's kind of hard here because, I don't trust. I hate to say it, but there's a lot of mistrust in our government, and to sit and have them trying to get all the information that they can about everybody, you can't trust what they're going to do with it. At the minimum, they've got to come out and let people know, why do you want all that? What are you going to use all that information for? And once again, you've got real problems going on all across this country, especially across the state of Philadelphia, or not Philadelphia, but Pennsylvania. And yet, this is their number one priority. And to me, I have fears about why. There's a lot of things you need to be focused on, and you're not. You're focused on this. And it wouldn't surprise me if it's being, gathered for the wrong reasons.
No, absolutely. And my first thought was maybe they'll sell it to the MyPillow guy, and now I'm going to get tons of MyPillow ads. But Brett, I wanted to get your thoughts.
Well, in terms of the way I think this information is most likely to be used is kind of a, Cambridge Analytica 2.0. I don't know exactly what they're going to do with it themselves, but I think we can be fairly certain it's going to end up in the wrong hands. And I'm not sure if that's going to be some domestic group for use in GOP politics, or if it's going to end up outside the United States in some way. The simple fact is these days, you have to question everything, including whether or not these guys are just going to box it up and ship it to Moscow. We really don't know what they're going to do with this information. There's a reason we don't typically give it to them. We don't centralize it in a way that gives them access to it. And now they're going through legal channels to essentially steal all this information. and there just can't be any good cause for it. So I don't know how it's going to end up in the wrong hands, but I do know that it will.
Yeah. All I want to know is if it does end up in Moscow, do I have to pay the shipping costs?
But where's the Republicans? Where's all these people out there that are the ones that, fear the government? I mean, this is the perfect reason why you should be screaming foul. And yet, where?
And again, to that point, here in Pennsylvania, we have 67 different counties, 67 different election officials. I was told by my Republican friends that the reason we have it set up in that way is diversity is our strength. You can't hack into one system. We got 67 different ones and 67 different people keeping an eye on things, so we have better security. And now you've got the Pennsylvania Senate, the Republicans in the Senate, wanting to subpoena all of those records so that they can control it. In what kind of cyber ninja future, I don't know. But Sarah, nothing good can come of it.
This is actually a dangerous thing for the Republicans to dip their toes in, because while it may have worked in Arizona, the latest poll that came out yesterday showed that that the number of Americans who believe the big lie is now down to 29%. So that's really getting small. Like, that means that there are actually Trump supporters who maybe don't even believe the big lie anymore. Majority of them are, of course, Republicans, which is why you see Republicans pushing this stuff. It's because their base is the one that's demanding it of them. But independents, obviously Democrats don't believe this, but now independents don't either. And I think people are starting to see the absurdity of it. And the more stories that get out there of, oh, we've got to zoom in and look, see if there's bamboo in this because it might be from China. Like, the more stories that get out there, the more humiliating it's going to be for the Republicans.
Yeah, no, I'm hoping for real humiliation. But the sad thing is they're attacking on all fronts. And I look at, Brett, your state of Ohio, where the gerrymandered maps are now public, and, well, even worse than I think we probably could have imagined before.
Yeah, the maps here, and again, they're now they've now been voted in, so they are the maps now. Now, there are going to be legal challenges. It'll go to the Ohio Supreme Court for sure, but the maps are flat out ridiculous. I mean, just giving an idea, the state here is about 54-46 Republican. It's about an R+8 state, and in the past congressional elections for the last 10 years, we've had 16 congressional seats, 12 of which were Republican, 4 of which were Democrats. So in a 54-46 state, we've got a 3-to-1 split, all right, in congressional seats, and a supermajority of Republicans in both the House and Senate. Complete domination and control. And it's been like that for over 10 years in a state that is just a few points from being right down the middle. This is how these things work, and this is how they take power and control that going forward. Keep in mind, in Ohio, we passed 2 ballot measures in the past 10 years to make it harder to gerrymander. And what we've ended up with is a gerrymander that's even worse than the one from the previous 10 years. That's how far they're willing to subvert the will of the people. And those ballot measures passed by 70% of the vote. And I think we're kind of seeing a little bit of the pushback on this. We take it back to the California recall. What we saw there was kind of a repudiation of the big lie, because the Republicans didn't run kind of a mainstream Republican semi-centrist kind of person who could have won, like somebody like an Arnold Schwarzenegger or something like that. They ran the most vile, right-wing nut job they could find. And the people were like, no, we're not following you. We're not taking it this far. We cannot support this. And which is why it ended up in a blowout. And I think that kind of result could be what you see here in a place like Ohio, where the gap is not nearly as big as people tend to think it is.
Yeah. And what I love about it is, we had talked about this earlier, is the sense of entitlement that Republicans believe that they have a right to all of those seats because past gerrymandering has given them a massive advantage. They believe that they're entitled to that. Voters be damned. And again, this is what when you give people absolute power, this is what we get, Sarah.
Yeah, and if you look at states like Texas, even Maryland, like the Democrats have done this in Maryland, which is sad because Maryland is pretty much all Democratic. So I don't understand what the point is of gerrymandering at that point. In Texas, it's just humiliating. I think it's Dan Crenshaw's district, which looks like a horseshoe, just like goes around, the large city. And it's so absurd. And Americans aren't stupid. They're really not. This is very, very easy to understand and to look at and go, oh, that's corruption. That's crap. And so these are not hard to win on. These are not hard issues to win on.
Dan Crenshaw and Jim Jordan have the two most gerrymandered districts in the country. And I live in, southern West Virginia, and I will tell you how bad it is in West Virginia. I can drive up the holler where I was raised, and everybody that lives on the right side of the road, their delegate belongs in the county. Everybody who lives on the other side of the road, their delegate belongs 40 miles down the road in the next county. It's blatantly obvious that you see people trying to play games with this to keep their people in power, and it's absolutely sickening.
But it comes back to, do voters get to pick their representatives, or in this case, representatives getting to pick their voters?
They set it up for themselves. That's a fact.
It is how they stay in power. And this is why I think, this week the Democrats came out with I would argue, a little bit more watered down version of the For the People Act. They're calling this bill the Freedom to Vote Act. It was put forth by Senator Amy Klobuchar. You got Joe Manchin to sign onto it because there was a bunch of stuff in there that he had proposed along with John Tester and Tim Kaine. Let's start with you, Rich, because Manchin has signed on to getting some of this done. It's going nowhere with the filibuster in place. Is there a way to carve out that Manchin will allow?
I really don't understand what Manchin is doing. I've been disgusted with him. West Virginia is 50th in the nation in infrastructure, and he's going to stand here and be he's going to be the reason why we don't get anything. I don't understand what is his issue. He will literally, to me, he's a male prostitute, and he sells himself to anybody who writes a check. And I hate to say it, but that's exactly the way I feel.
Sarah, your thoughts?
He's right. You can look at Joe Manchin's cash that he's raised and see exactly who's given him money, and that's basically matching his vote. What is interesting, though, is if you look at all the money that Manchin has got in, I think it's like the last 10 years, the West Virginia Democratic Party has given him over $100,000. They're his highest donor. So then my question is, okay, you're getting a whole lot of money from the Democratic Party. That's coming from really big Democratic donors and not just like, halfway Democrats. If you're giving money to the party, that's a hardcore Democrat, especially that kind of money.
But you have to understand that in West Virginia, the Democratic Party has one mission, and that's to keep Joe Manchin in power. I mean, literally, the rumor is that the chairman of the Democratic Party in West Virginia is Joe Manchin's cousin.
But the question I have is, why then can't the Democrats buy Joe Manchin if they're giving him that much money? Where is he? Is there just that much that he's getting from Wall Street that he's like, oh no, we can't be taxing those rich people, we can't be collecting money from those corporations. It's this level of corruption that, just keeps moving its way through our government. And it sucks because we need Joe Manchin, and it sucks because I don't want Joe Manchin. So I really wish we could win another Senate seat so we could just be like, see ya.
Yeah.
Wouldn't want to be
not there. I don't believe in West Virginia. Brett, last thought.
Yeah, well, I actually think that, and again, I'm gonna try to be as optimistic about it as I can. I honestly think that, especially with all these different, kind of Republican fraud measures going on across the country, we are every day giving Joe Manchin all the cover he would ever need to change his mind. I mean, it is getting so incredibly bad out there that when Joe Manchin does finally change his mind, when he does finally, give in and allow these changes to take place, which I honestly believe is what he's going to end up doing, that he's going to have a really good argument for, hey, I tried my best to maintain, the way things were, and I just couldn't because things just got too out of control, and I had to. I think he's bargaining for a way that he can make a case to the people he needs to reelect, and most of which are Republicans. Now, will that be the way that it turns out? I don't know, but that's, when I have my optimistic hat on, that's kind of where I think this is going to end up. That this level of ridiculousness simply can't hold, and one guy is not going to be able to shoulder all that and be the one person responsible for maintaining.
Joe knows that the only way he stays in power is if he starts to reach out and relates to these Republicans in West Virginia, and that's exactly what he's doing. He wants to be able to go into 2024 and say, look, I'm the one that stood with Donald Trump. I'm the one that fought the Democrats, and these people are going to vote for him.
No, that's the sad
I think that's BS. I think if we send a whole bunch of transportation money to West Virginia, and all of a sudden all of these folks have jobs who didn't, I think Manchin gets to do a victory tour with Joe Biden and be like, I brought these jobs here.
Yeah, if that money goes there, we passed a bill for $1.6 billion to fix our roads, and we have the worst roads in the world, and that money's gone.
Yeah, no, it is what it is. I'm going to take a quick break here. Guys, stick around through the break. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. You got any questions, comments? We'd love to hear it. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. You got suggestions on topics for our future panels? Let me know. I'm going to take a quick break right here, right back with our all-star panel. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show.
More American than workers standing up, and the union gives a voice to win. On The Rick Smith Show.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1947. That was the day workers at the International Harvester plant in Louisville, Kentucky had enough. They had just rejected a pay scale lower than that of harvester workers elsewhere. In her recent article for Leo Weekly, historian Tony Gilpin refers to the lower pay as the Southern Differential. Harvester workers walked off the job in a 40-day strike. Black and white Louisville workers were united in a rare form of solidarity. International Harvester had a long labor-hating history. Its forerunner had been the McCormick Reaper Works, the site that sparked the 1886 Haymarket incident in Chicago. Harvester had been able to keep the unions out until the farm equipment workers of the CIO finally organized there in 1941. And the FE followed Harvester as they attempted to escape to the union-free South. The FE successfully organized the new Louisville plant just 2 months before the strike. Workers learned quickly that they were paid much less making the same equipment as their brothers in Chicago, Indianapolis, and elsewhere. Gilpin adds that the FE literature forthrightly stated, quote, once the Negro and white workers were united, the low-wage system of the South would collapse. Workers pressed for their demands and appealed to area farmers for support. They stressed that farmers would not pay less for equipment, simply because local workers were paid less. Black and white workers picketed together, ate together, and planned their strike together at their new union hall. Harvester initially tried to red bait FE leaders. When that failed, the company was forced to grant steep wage increases. Gilpin cites FE News, which reported, quote, 2 smashing victories in hand. One over International Harvester, the other over the Mason-Dixon low wage line. Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com.
Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So on Saturday, September 18th, supposed to be Insurrection 2.0. Lots of... I had a lot of people early on saying this was going to be like a million MAGA march again. All of the patriots were going to come out with their trifold hats and their cute military costumes, and they were going to converge on Washington, D.C. To show their power once again and their love of the former guy. But now I'm starting to hear some lowering of expectations because if you saw the rally last week with the My Pillow guy down in Kentucky, they were expecting 10,000, got about 250. So tapping down the expectations. And here to share some thoughts on, well, what we might see on September 18th. Our all-star panel of Brett Pransky, our own Brett Pransky, Sarah Burris of Raw Story, and Rich Ojeda of No Dems Left Behind. Sarah, let's start with you. You live in D.C., preparing for a huge outcry of Trump supporters in your neighborhood, are you?
Not in my hood. I'm a little bit too far north in the city. People don't like to walk up the DuPont Circle Hill. It's really steep, and that just takes a lot of effort. So I was going to go downtown and like find myself a nice rooftop bar and just overlook the crazy. But now they're saying that maybe it's not going to be that many people because the Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers and all the other militias are being like, oh, this is a honeypot. This is basically a trap, and the FBI is going to be there with handcuffs ready to arrest everybody. They are bringing out the National Guard. The fence is back up. Like, DC is taking it very, very seriously. I think I was concerned, but now that I'm starting to hear all of these folks talk about, the online chatter being, don't go. I don't know. I think it would be interesting if we end up with 6 National Guard troops to 1 MAGA dude. It could be a couple hundred people. I think if it is a couple hundred people and it looks pathetic and anemic, I think that's bad for Trump. It sort of makes him look like a loser that they can't even get, the MAGA people together. Even though everybody was saying, don't go. I think it still looks bad for him.
Yeah. Brett, Roger Stone said, the same thing. Don't go. The FBI is gonna be there for you. And I look at someone like Stone as a master manipulator, someone who really understands, how to message and do this kind of stuff to keep the crazy all wadded up. This is a perfect conspiracy, a perfect thing for them to then pick up their failure and move it forward, I think.
Yeah, this is kind of expected. I mean, and when I saw Roger Stone say that this was all an FBI sting and not to go, what I read that as is Roger knows nobody's going to show. He knows nobody's going to show, and so we're gonna pre-spin this a little bit so that when nobody shows, it's going to be exactly what Roger Stone said it was going to be. See, I made these people not show up because I am that influential. I mean, Roger Stone knows the game. He knows how to play it. He knows how to spin. He knows how to get attention. And he knew this thing was going to flop because, this as a country collectively, we've been turning away from the big lie. We've been turning away from this kind of, hyper militant, nonsensical right wing, just nuttery. Because it doesn't matter how often these people tell us that the COVID isn't real. The hospitals are still full. It doesn't matter how many times they tell us that Joe Biden was legitimately elected. It still doesn't make it true. You know what I mean? And so Roger comes along. He does the only thing he can do. He knows people aren't going to show up, so he's going to pretend it was what he always knew was going to happen.
Yeah, not surprising there. But here's the thing, Rich. The National Guard is going to be out in full force. As Sarah said, it'll probably be a 6-to-1 ratio. They are prepared like they probably should have been on January 6th.
Absolutely. They will be ready this time. The police will be ready this time. And I will tell you, I think that they need to make sure that they don't play no games with these people. I would literally draw a line. And if you cross that line, you will be dealt with severely, because we can never allow what happened on January the 6th to ever take place again in this country. And, like Brett was talking about, Roger Stone and them know, we just watched, literally, like you said, 250 people showed up to Mike Lindell. There's a lot of people that are waking up in this country and are realizing that this is absolute garbage. And a lot of them are starting to realize that I'm not going to be a part of that anymore. So, I think right now Roger Stone is trying to do some damage control because they know this is going to be a severe flop. But no matter what, no matter how many people shows, I don't care if only 200 people show. If they think for 1 second that they're going to storm our Capitol, they're going to get dealt with accordingly.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And but here's the thing: I'm glad that they're tapping down, saying telling people to stay home because they're going to come from areas that are really struggling with COVID right now. The last thing we need is a super spreader event in the nation's capital. Keep those people in the states where all the craziness is going on. But here again, we're in this moment where okay, the big lie over here isn't working, but they're still pushing all of the misinformation and all of the COVID denial nonsense and all the just craziness around the vaccine. So I got to tell you guys, I'm happy that this is tanking.
Yeah, I think it's really important to understand, though, that even though we're very likely going to get a small turnout for this event, the people who are most likely to show up, even in smaller numbers, are very likely your most hardcore, potentially most dangerous folks. So Rich is right. There should be a line drawn, and they should be dealt with severely, because chances are the people who you're dealing with have already pushed through their own side telling them not to show up. So it's, we need to really be on the lookout for these folks, because chances are the people we're getting are going to be the worst of the worst.
That's an excellent point. You were going to jump in, Rich?
Well, I mean, my thoughts, with these people here, I mean, some of them are just not that smart, and some of these people are being manipulated to think that they're going there for the right reasons. So, I look at this and I just say that as long as we are ready to deal with these people, whether it's a big crowd or a large crowd, obviously the Capitol Police, the National Guard need to be prepared for thousands upon thousands to show up. And, if they don't, well, then that's the way it should be. But from here on out, I mean, we need to make sure that we always protect our Capitol so that we never see what took place on January the 6th ever again.
Yeah, right there with you. Sarah?
One of the things you were talking about, the COVID thing, we had an increase in COVID cases whenever they came, because they were eating in our restaurants, they were staying in our hotels, and the people who clean the hotel rooms and who work as servers, they were getting COVID because of these idiots, and so it spread throughout the city. My neighborhood is one of the highest vaccinated neighborhoods in DC, and I think we're at like 11 billion% of vaccinated people in the city. It's really high. So it's really frustrating because I don't want these people to, trash my capital, trash my city, but I really don't want them to bring COVID to our people.
Yeah, you definitely don't want them to infect everyone. And this is where, you go. At this point, we've had so much research done, so much information on the vaccine. These are the ones who are vaccine hesitant. And one of my favorite new bits is over the claim that the vaccine will make men's testicles get larger. In fact, Nicki Minaj somehow got into all of this about large testicles or some nonsense. Sarah, can you walk us through what that is?
So apparently it was her cousin's friend. I've been saying that it was her cousin's best friend's uncle's sister's psychic, just because it's that level of absurdity. And basically what happened is this dude, got the vaccine, and then, a week later or something, his testicles got really big. Well, it turns out when you get chlamydia, your testicles swell. So that explains why all of a sudden his fiance that he was supposed to get married to put the wedding on hold. It's not because of the vaccine. It's because she's like, I think you're screwing around on us. So it's the weirdest story now. And I guess the White House reached out to her because they wanted to have her talk to some doctors. And then she tweeted out something about how, the White House wants to bring me over. And then it's just like, oh my God, can you just imagine Nicki Minaj and Joe Biden in the Oval Office talking about balls? It's the weirdest world we are living in right now. And, this is where we are.
Let me say this is one of the reasons why it just absolutely sickens me that we give certain people a microphone. There's, Nicki Minaj, you got it. You're a singer, you're a dancer. I got it. But, just keep to yourself and don't give her a microphone to be able to spew this garbage, because this is embarrassing. How about tell your cousin, if it's not chlamydia, he may get checked for, I don't know, testicular cancer. I don't know, something.
Anything else. And you're right. I mean, Sarah and I were talking earlier about a story that I guess was it a marine oncologist, Sarah?
Yeah, urologist. It was a marine urologist that tweeted out and said, just so you know, like, I've seen so many soldiers come through who got the vaccine, and if there was a problem with their testicles, I would know about it, because if one group of people cares the most about their testicles, it's the Marines, which made me think of Rich.
So I guess, Rich, are people in the military more concerned about their testicles than the rest of the male population? Because I think I'm going to push back on that.
Yeah, I mean, we like to think that, those of us that jump out of airplanes and stuff like that have bigger, but I mean, at the end of the day, it's not really the topic of conversation that you hear when you're hanging around with all the troops.
So if they were bigger, maybe the shot, if it were possible and make them bigger, it would be a good thing, no?
Well, I don't think so, because I jumped out of planes for 20 years, and sometimes landings can hurt.
No,
I've
heard that.
Like, if they're a big cushion, then landing on it might be fine, but they're not that
No,
big.
you don't know, Sarah. Stay out of this one. It would be painful.
Yeah. So, Brett, you want to get into this jackpot, or are we moving on?
I would just like to say that the show has entirely gone off the rails. But I will say this. These stories are are important in terms of the fact that they take up the bandwidth, in our media, in our attention span, that they're, that these things, they take up space, and they get tweeted and retweeted and talked about on the news and so on. Meanwhile, there are really important things going on in the world that get almost no coverage. There's all kinds of stuff that we really should be talking about. So this story is kind of unimportant, but also important. It's unimportant in the subject matter itself, which probably couldn't be less important. But it's really important in terms of the fact that look what we can put out there. Look what can happen. Look how easily distracted we can be from things of real importance. And so there's all kinds of really important stories going on, especially when it comes to the lives of working people. And there's a number of strikes in the country right now that are in various stages of progress that are getting absolutely no time in any media outlets whatsoever. Yet this story will become a part of the news loop that will be repeated every hour on the hour for 24 hours a day. Yeah. And it's kind of sad that we've come to this, but so like I said, it's important that we talk about it, and also important that we call it out for what it is, and that is a big distraction.
Yeah, I mean, the weird thing is I couldn't name a song that Nicki Minaj has sung, but I now know about her brothers, cousins, sisters, uncles, gardeners' testicles, and I don't want to know that. And the problem I have is, by spreading this, someone's going to hear that initial thing and go, a COVID shot, giant balls, no thanks. And they're not going to get the vaccine, and they're not going to protect themselves. And we're going to be further down the road, and this mutating and things just getting worse. So all of this disinformation, all of this misinformation, all of this BS is going to make it worse for all of us down the road.
Yep.
That's absolutely correct.
Yeah. It's sad, but I would say too, it does give us an opportunity to kind of talk about the absurdity of all of these conspiracy theories. I wrote this week about, there was a young woman who was about to get married. She was supposed to get married on the 21st of August, and went to her bachelorette party in Nashville and got COVID and died on September 10th. And now, instead of, having her wedding, her parents are holding her funeral. And her parents, said in their obituary and said to the media, she was scared because she read information that told her that that it caused infertility. And the one thing she wanted is, like, the second that she and her fiance got married, is they wanted to start trying to have kids. And so she was terrified. And then finally she got to a point where she read enough stuff and was like, oh, okay. And so they signed up to get the vaccine. She just got the virus before she could get the vaccine.
It's terrible.
I mean, these are important things to talk about. These myths and these lies, we have to, it's important to mock them, but it's important to also use them as a teaching experience to be like, no, not only is this a lie, but so is all of this other crazy sounding stuff.
No, you're right. And in the mocking frame, I look at this South Carolina GOP operative who, for the last several months, has been, mocking the virus, saying it's a hoax, it's non-existent, nothing to worry about. He's now dead. Got the COVID.
Yeah, there are these people that are, saying with their last dying breath, I still don't believe, and
I respect them. Those people I respect. It's the person who goes, "Oh my gosh, I got to the end and I should have gotten I should have got the vaccine." Yeah, you should have.
Well, I mean, look at the far right radio media folks. I mean, they're dropping like flies. I mean, Truffles, the Trumpian clown from Florida, guess what? Just died. All of these people that are, have a microphone, and instead of using that microphone to try to convince people to do what's right, that could potentially or will save their lives, they're the complete opposite, and they're dropping like flies.
Yep.
And part of me, is I guess kind of cruel when I say, yeah, good, that's just another one gone.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, they got family members that rely on them and need them, and now are going to mourn them.
Yeah, but here's the thing, and I because you had the one in Arizona, you got the one in Nashville. There's been a bunch of radio hosts, as you pointed out, who were the anti-vaxxers. Oh, it's all a hoax crowd. While I don't care that they've died off, my problem is how many people did they convince through their platform to not protect themselves, and how many people did they end up killing as a part of their rhetoric we're never going to hold them accountable for.
That Christian broadcasting guy in Colorado, like he's been talking against the vaccine and against, calling COVID a hoax for the last year, and that dude just died.
Look, I live in Southern West Virginia, and I go to Walmart, and I'm the only person that wears a mask half the time. And it's because these people absolutely do not believe that COVID is what it is. And our local hospital is filled. Every ventilator is taken. The nurses, I spoke to a nurse the other day, and I asked her, I said, are people getting off of these ventilators? And she looked at me and she said, no, they're not. You've got people that were vaccinated. You got, and even them getting off the ventilator they've taken 15 years off of their lives, and they were vaccinated. But these people that are going on these ventilators, for the most part, they're done. It's over.
Yeah. I mean, we see these stories all across the country. Mississippi setting up a field hospital in a parking garage, northern Idaho giving the okay to ration. I mean, in your state, Brett, I mean, they're the diminishing number of beds as well.
Yeah, I saw a report today. Again, I live in Columbus, Ohio, which, for listeners who aren't familiar with the state, is right in the middle of the state, which is pretty much, the central location and closest to everywhere. So all the rural areas in the state probably go to Columbus first. And I saw a report today that said there are 21 ICU beds left in Columbus, Ohio, just 21. They're absolutely, filled up to capacity. And I think, one of the things that we're seeing is that, we're talking about vaccine mandates and all these different things that we would like to do. We're noticing that corporate America is beginning to actually lead the charge. You'll rarely see me say anything good about corporate America, but they do know how to manage risk. And they do know that when all of this is over, there's going to be accountability. And the corporations know this, and they know that people are going to have actionable claims when all of this is over. And if they didn't do the right things, that they're going to, they're going to be on the hook for a lot of injury and a lot of potential issues, which is why corporations are not, they got to it first.
Yep.
And when Biden came along and started, telling us to wear masks and, talking about mandates and things, this was cover for what the corporate world already wanted to do, because they understand risk. The American people may not understand risk, at least not a large portion on the right may not understand risk. But corporations do, and they know real from what's not real, and they're responding accordingly.
No, that's why I've said capitalism will figure it out. We always do, and I said from the beginning we should be filing workers' comp claims on every worker who gets it, and we should be filing lawsuits against school districts when kids come home with it. This way we force them into doing what they have to do. I got to take a quick break right here, guys. Stick around through the break. On the other side, I want to talk a little bit about tax the rich. Joe Biden gave a speech here recently. We're going to maybe start thinking about possibly, I don't know, taxing people who we haven't quite done so much over the last couple of decades. Quick break, right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.
Remembering that united we bargain, divided we beg. Rick Smith.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1945. That was the day oil workers walked off the job. The strike soon spread to 20 states and involved more than 43,000 workers at 22 oil companies. After years of wartime wage freezes, the union's demand was 52 for 40, 52 hours pay for 40 hours work. Workers demanded a 30% pay increase, shift differentials, and an eventual return to the 36-hour work week. The strike began in Michigan at the Saccone Vacuum Refinery in Trenton. From there, it spread to Gulf, Sinclair, and Shell. By October 4th, President Truman signed Executive Order 9639, allowing the Secretary of the Navy to seize petroleum operations. The Oil Workers International Union CIO immediately called off the strike and ordered its members back to work. A month later, the Navy had still not relinquished control of operations. The Union considered Truman's seizure a betrayal. There was no mechanism put in place to settle the dispute or consider workers' demands. By January 1946, the oil panel created by the Secretary of Labor finally awarded oil workers an 18% wage increase. Though disappointed, the Union considered it a victory. They asserted the strike action was significant on a number of levels. The first nationwide industry strike had just forced the oil companies to meet with the union for the very first time. The OWI believed the groundwork for industry-wide bargaining had been finally established. It had been the first post-war strike and had forced the government to begin moving away from wartime wage controls. Of the post-war strikes, it won the largest pay increase. And importantly, it broke the power of Standard Oil to dictate wages to the industry through its dealings with its independent union.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So the big Met Gala in New York City saw all of the elites come out for their little dinner and to show off all of their new clothes. My favorite of them, Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, got the white dress with the "Tax the Rich" in bright red letters. Now, the Washington Post sought to beat her up. A lot of articles on how unusual it is for someone like her to be showing up at an enormously costly event. And there's some question about that. But the fact, anything to divert the fact of, we got to start taxing rich people. In fact, Joe Biden came out and had a speech saying, hey, we're going to start taxing rich people. And here to share some thoughts on, should we do that? Should we have the audacity to tax those who have done so much for us? I've got our all-star panel of Brett Pransky, Sarah Burris, and Rich Ojeda. Guys, thanks for sticking around.
Hey, bon.
Hey.
So the dress. Anybody got a problem with the dress?
Oh my God, it was so cute. It was really cute. And it was up the shoulder. And it totally hugged her curves. It was really cute. Other than that. My favorite outfit was the woman who had to peg the patriarchy on the front of her. I thought that was pretty funny. But, that's a little scene.
I think from what I heard, though, because Alexandria Ocasio was actually invited, she didn't have to pay the $35,000 a plate. So
right.
Yeah, she was comped. There's no way that she could or would pay that much. I mean, she has bills too.
But I think it's a great message. I think that it's time. I mean, we've got people, they always said, trickle down economics. And, when the filthy rich's plate runneth over, What they didn't realize is that they keep a plate underneath their bowl, and it catches that money. And instead of letting it go down to the people, they just use it to buy bigger yachts and bigger houses and go to space. So
and false buyback.
Yeah. So I'm completely for taxing the rich. I think that, Elizabeth Warren said that if we charged or taxed everybody after they make the first 50 million, 2 cents on the dollar after that, that would raise $3 trillion a year. I say let's go that route.
Yeah, I'm not sure the math on that, but we do need to start taxing them. But I'll be honest with you, I got to give AOC credit. It took some swollen testicles to walk in there with that dress, considering those are the elite of New York. Those are the wealthy elite that we're saying, I'm coming for you.
But if there's one thing about all of those people there, they probably all agree that we should tax the rich. Like, that's the thing about a whole bunch of people like Warren Buffett who are saying, yes, please, for the love of God, tax me more. I would love to pay more. The problem is that, the government Republicans just keep cutting and keep cutting and keep cutting. And then there are the people like the Mercers whose company didn't pay taxes forever. And so finally after like 10 years, they're being told they have to pay $7 billion of back taxes that they owe. And that's just the Mercers. Like, we've got, I think Biden said it was like $600 billion a year in uncollected taxes that we could be collecting. I mean, this isn't people who the fair share people, right? These are people who just don't pay their stupid bills.
No, and in fact, the Treasury Department came out with a report this week that said just that. In excess of $600 billion a year isn't being paid, and that could equate to about $7 trillion over the next decade. So when I hear people like Joe Manchin say we can't possibly afford $3.5 trillion to fund all of our human infrastructure needs, I'm going, yeah, we can. In fact, we can afford to do double what's being proposed.
Yeah, that's absolutely spot on right there. My thoughts is that when you have these people that make the money that they make and they get away with not having to pay taxes, the average person in this country doesn't get that capability. We have to pay our taxes, and it's absolutely sickening to think that these people are getting away with it. Congressman Ro Khanna said, he wants to make sure that we fund the IRS with the capability and to hire more people to specifically go after these people who've been beating, the taxes, because that right there alone would create like $600 billion a year. When all that stuff adds up, that's money that we could do some real good for this country with. And it's time for us to do that.
Yep.
If we could spend 20 years and $2 trillion at war, let's spend the next 20 years, let's spend $2 trillion on our country.
Yeah, I know. 600 billion here, 600 billion there. It eventually adds up to real money, Brett.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. I've always been a strong believer in what I like to call Spider-Man ethics. This is the idea that with great power comes great responsibility. You know what I mean? Now, nobody in the real world has actual superpowers. In the real world, power is money. And so when you have people who have this ridiculous sum of money, their responsibility should match their wealth. Now, how we get to that kind of balance, we can debate that all the live long day. But one thing we can't debate is that any of our wealthy people are doing that currently. None of our country's wealthiest are living up to that simple statement, that with great power comes great responsibility. We have massive amounts of power out there. And what do we have? We have a space race between billionaires. And we have billionaires racing each other into space over vanity, purely over vanity. Meanwhile, we have conditions in America, the richest country in the history of ever. And we have people going to sleep at night without a roof over their heads, without a meal. It's criminal.
Yep.
And it's something that we should, and what we need to do, and this is kind of a collective thing, I don't know how exactly to get there, is to shift our understanding of what the balance between wealth and responsibility is. If we get there, then it'll be easy to make arguments about where we should tax people and, what's the right amount to pay and so on. Because these, where they're at now, it's so shamefully irresponsible that they should be embarrassed. Instead, they're openly buying politicians in order to keep things as slanted as they have always been.
No, you're right. And, I had a friend years ago who came from a very wealthy family, and the story that he told is like his grandfather during the World War II era was actually proud of the fact that he was able to pay the top marginal tax rate, which at the time was 92%. He said it was part of his patriotic duty to make sure that he paid his taxes so that that money could be used to defend the country, to feed people, to do all the things that we needed to get done. That ideal of the past, that it's your civic duty, it's your responsibility to humanity, that is gone. We went through the 80s of greed is good, the one who dies with the most toys wins, and now we've internalized all that stuff, Rich.
Yeah, I'm going to tell you, and I know this might be a crazy hoop dream, but my thought is $20 billion could end homelessness in America. I kind of wish we would say, okay, Bezos, you're going to get the homeless problem. That's yours. And let's start assigning the issues that we have in this country to these filthy rich people. And let's mirror them up with a filthy rich evangelical as well. So Jim Baker and Jeff Bezos are going to solve the homeless problem in this country and work that route. It is absolutely sickening that we have this level of wealth. And Brett said it absolutely perfectly. These people they're not even ashamed of it. And they should be. They should be ashamed of the fact that you have more money than you could spend in 1,000 lifetimes, and you still just want more. It could be your legacy. You could have the legacy that you ended world hunger, that you made sure that everybody had adequate, clean drinking water. That could be your legacy. And yet these people, they've got the money to follow through and accomplish that, and they won't. And it's so sad.
Yeah. Because the reality is enough is never enough. And I often think of the former CEO of Caterpillar, who was asked, how much profit is enough? And he said that it's never enough. We're always going to squeeze efficiencies. We're always going to squeeze wages down. We're always going to squeeze the quarter till the eagle screams, so to speak, because it's never enough. And that's the mindset. It's never enough with these people, Sarah.
Yeah, and what's interesting is the thing with the pandemic is we're starting to see now that folks kind of have choices whenever they want to go back to work and who they want to work for. And so a lot of people who aren't getting paid enough, that's not enough anymore, right? Like there are other options out there. And so you've got, I read the other day that we're about to have a nursing shortage because there are these like traveling nurses now for a massive company, and they can make 90 to 150 grand a year. Whereas at the local community hospital, they're probably going to get 60 if they're lucky.
Yeah.
And so it's, that is sort of, in some ways, that is resetting a little bit. And every time I read one of those stories, like I get a little shoot of excitement where it's just like, oh, somebody's winning. But we know it's short lived. And I like the idea that Rich came up with. We could just tell Jeff Bezos that, we're going to rename water and we'll just start drinking Bezos. And maybe that'll make him happy enough. Like we've changed the name of water to you, and henceforth we shall call it after you because you're going to make it clean for the whole world.
There you go. It's going to be interesting to see where this plays out. But here's the problem. We focus on all of the attention on that kind of stuff while you've got, as Brett said earlier, you've got workers in 5 different states at Nabisco on strike today, fighting for, better wages, hours, mostly hours. They'd like to spend some time with their family, please. But our mainstream corporate controlled media having none of it.
Yeah, well, here's the thing, though, what she also said about the nurses. You're going to sit here and you're going to bring people in and you're going to pay them $7,500, a salary. But yet the nurses that you have in the hospitals that have been working nonstop for the past 19 months, you're not going to pay them that salary. I mean, to me, we called these people heroes for an entire year. The people who stocked the shelves, the truck drivers, the nurses, and we didn't do nothing for them. I mean, This is absolute garbage.
No, I'm right there with you. I'm right there with you guys. We got a lot of work to do and a lot of craziness going on. And nothing of surprise. I appreciate you guys sticking around for us. I appreciate this week's panel, our panel of Sarah Burris of Raw Story, Brett Pransky, the professor here with the program, and also Rich Ojeda of No Dem Left Behind. If you got any questions, comments, I'd love to hear it. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. If you missed any portion of the program, you can download the podcast there at the website. If you've got any thoughts, you want to follow us on social media, you can follow us at Rick Smith Show. On Facebook, give us a like. On YouTube, make sure you subscribe and give it a share. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you back here next time. Here at The Rick Smith Show, we don't accept corporate advertising. Never have, never will. In fact, we spend most of our time giving corporations the finger. We don't stop the show every few minutes to sell you supplements, beet juice, or whatever snake oil the right-wing loonies are pawning. That's because we're not sellouts. It's also because we're supported by our friends in labor and by people like you. If you like what we do, become a patron by going to patreon.com/Rick Smith Show. That's patreon.com/Rick Smith Show. Give what you can, if you can, and help us fight for the working class majority. Because together we bargain, divided we beg. Thank you for tuning in.